Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina Woodruff from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into liking ourselves first. So we're going to discuss why teens seek validation and how parents can help them outgrow it. So first, we're going to get to our parenting moment, which Selina has.
All right, so it's end of school year right now for us, and my kids' elementary school does awards. And before the awards assembly, the teachers email out and let you know if your kid's getting an award, so you know to come to the awards assembly, but they ask you to keep it a surprise and not tell the student. Well, I have two that are in elementary school, and they know this routine, and they know that if mom's there, then somebody's getting an award, right? And so one of my kids were getting an award and not the other. And so I had a moment that I was like, do I warn the other one? Do I tell her that she's not getting an award? Because I knew when she saw me at school, that's going to help make her think like, oh, is it me? Am I getting an award? I must be getting an award, right?
Yeah.
But I decided that this was going to be a good opportunity for a learning experience. And I knew it was going to end in tears. And I was ready for it. And so it played out how I thought. We went to the school and my son got his awards. And at the end, sister was in tears. She's used to getting awards. She's used to being at the top and she's used to getting the awards. And so that was a new life experience for her to not get an award. And so it was a good opportunity. Her teacher was fantastic and talked to her too, but just trying to show her and help her understand that she didn't need an award to validate herself and the hard work that she'd done, that she could do that for herself, but also understanding like being happy and excited for other people's, because I didn't want to minimize my son's accomplishments and his excitement of getting the awards that he got. But so I thought it was fitting in this topic right now that seeking that validation from other people or outside sources and having that opportunity to help her understand that she's not always going to get the award and that we can celebrate other people, but also she can validate herself and be proud of the work that she did.
Yeah, there's a great quote that goes along with that says that our value is not diminished by the success of others. And helping our children understand that can be a powerful life lesson for them.
Yeah, and that's a tough situation because we want so badly to protect our kids and we hate seeing them upset. And so it's so natural to want to protect them from that. And I almost wonder what would have happened if you had given her the heads up, if it would have been less painful. I would imagine not, right? And I think you did it right. Like, I feel like, yeah, that was a good learning opportunity, but it's also a part of life. We can work really, really, really hard in something, even as an adult, and then somebody else gets a bunch of credit and we feel unrecognized and unappreciated. Wow, does that sound like motherhood? But, it's an important life skill to develop. And it really does fit in perfectly with today's topic that kids naturally seek validation. So they're learning and growing. They're developing their sense of identity. They're developing their sense of self-worth. And we live in a society that is so driven by accomplishment. And it's all over the place. Social media makes it way worse. And we'll get into the whole social media thing in a bit. But we are praised from a very young age for getting the right answer. I know teachers have gotten better about not calling students out if they get the wrong answer, right? I know parents and teachers are probably pretty good at that, but we're praised from such a young age to get the right answer. And so it's just this driven to succeed, driven to always want to do better. And that's not a bad thing. That drive can be a really good thing, but it can be really crushing for kids when they don't get it. And so our job as parents is to teach them that their self-worth is not tied to awards, to accomplishments, They are valuable as a human being simply because they exist, because they are, and nothing can subtract from their inherent value as a person.
Yeah, so I wanted to start with this quote that I read that actually started this series of where these thoughts came from that I read. And it says, tell your kids that if someone doesn't like them, they shouldn't feel they need to work harder or be different to make that person like them. Our task is not to make everyone like us, it is to like ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that's our focus and what we want to teach and where this came from. So let's start finding opportunities to like ourselves.
Yeah, I really love that, teaching kids to like themselves and to like them for who they are. Because another really common thing for kids to do is they feel like if their friends can do something, they should be able to do it too. And maybe they don't have that capability. So Curtis was outside throwing a ball with our middle daughter, and she's actually fairly good at it. Like, I mean, for an 8-year-old, she's really not too bad at throwing a softball around. And so we had some neighbor kids who also play ball, and they had some gloves, so they came out and they joined it. And this one boy wasn't very good at it, and he just got frustrated, and he sat down and he's like, I'm just terrible at this. And Kurt's like, well, that's okay. And he goes, but she was really good at it, referring to my daughter, but she was really good at it the first time. And he's like, but not everybody is. Anyways, and so kids often derive their own self-worth based on the value of others, right? Or they often derive their own self-worth in comparison to others. So that's another, I think, good place to start. So how we can help kids move past that and understand young kids understand their own self-worth.
If we look at where they're at, if we look at teens in the scheme of human development, we're at this stage with teenagers that they're trying to figure out who they are. And so part of the process of that is them getting feedback from their peers, from others, from teachers, from role models, whatever it might be. And so that's where some of that gets developed from. They're getting feedback to understand, like, is this okay? Is this not okay? Does this, XYZ behavior or whatever look good on me? And so that's where so much of that's derived from. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing when they start to base their entire value system of themselves on the feedback of others, because others' feedback isn't always accurate. And so we have to teach them and help them understand where self-worth actually comes from.
Right. And that can be really tricky for kids to figure out. So I would imagine, and I'm curious if you guys agree with this, that self-worth, it begins at home. So when a kid feels secure and loved and validated at home, regardless of what they can or can't do, regardless of the mistakes they make, when they feel loved and validated, it gives them more confidence to go out in the world and, well, not be as good at something as somebody else, or to make a mistake and not feel like it's the end of the world, because they are secure that they still have at least one person in their life that loves them unconditionally.
Yeah, it definitely starts at home. There's a lot of factors that can contribute to it. Modeling by parents is one of the more critical ones. The way we praise, we tend to have a habit of praising results rather than effort. So like if we have a kid that consistently always has excellent grades and you're so smart. Now what happens when they do something that isn't so smart? They start to base their value on that. And so we want to praise the effort that goes into it. Hey, you have to work hard. You worked really hard, and it really shows that you've worked hard, is a better way to praise than, wow, you're so smart. Look at all those great grades.
So self-confidence comes from your thoughts. And so, yes, I think that at home and how parents talk and support your child is going to help influence or affect that. But also, your child could choose to believe that what you're saying isn't true. And so, really, self-confidence comes from your own thoughts. So if we want to teach our teens about self-confidence, then focus can be on their thoughts and the relationship that they have with themselves. Are they their own best friend? Are they true to themselves? Do they have confidence that they can handle any emotion? That's where self-confidence is going to come from. Absolutely, praising and helping your kid feel secure and safe in your home is going to influence and help that. But when we understand that self-confidence comes from ourselves and what we believe about ourselves, that's where the focus can be, instead of finding that validation outside of us.
I think another piece of it too, this isn't a simple, like, cut and dry topic. It's not like if you do X, Y, and Z, your kid's going to have self-confidence, because there are so many factors that play into it that we've already talked about. But another one is having the opportunity to fail. Children need to work at things and do things that put them at risk of failure and not doing well. It's very important that they fail and have that experience, because failure means learning. It's just an opportunity to learn. In fact, we sometimes hear about individuals who, they were praised for how smart they are their whole life and how great they are, and they are hesitant to try new things because they feel like if they're not good at it, then they're no longer smart, or whatever those repercussions might be for them. So an opportunity to fail is critical. I love the story of Thomas Edison and his whole process to develop the incandescent light bulb, right? He had a lot of failures. And when asked about him, he said, well, I didn't fail however many times. And he has a number. I forget what it is, but
let's just say 100.
Let's just say 100. That'll work. If he failed 100 times, he says, no, I didn't ever fail. I learned 100 ways not to make a light bulb. And there's a ton of value in that, in teaching that principle to our children, that failure is just an opportunity to learn and to grow from it. And when we get good at failing, we don't destroy our own self-confidence. What we're really getting good at is learning to gain experiences that teach us lessons and help us learn to do something a different way.
Right. And so as I'm thinking about this from a developmental standpoint, young kids actually have quite a bit of self-confidence, and it's almost like pre-wired into them because they are learning so many new things, and they're going to fail at a lot and keep trying. And so they almost come pre-wired with a lot of self-confidence to be able to overcome challenges that they face. I think of my own 5-year-old and how fast his new socks make him, according to him, right? And he thinks and he wants to race everybody because his new socks make him really fast. And kids do. Right. And kids do the same thing with shoes. These new shoes make me so fast. Want to race? I can race so fast in these new shoes. So, kids that have this amazing ability to be self-confident. And then I feel like as they move into the teenage years is kind of when that self-confidence can start to wane. And I think oftentimes it does come from comparison to others, or maybe they haven't tried as many things that they aren't good at yet. Or maybe they just have more opportunities to fail, right? Because, they've been in a situation where they didn't get the award when they usually do. Or, maybe they do try something new and they're just terrible at it, or they fail a class for the first time. There's a new concept that they're trying to learn at school and they're like, this makes no sense to me. Am I just stupid? Can I not do this? And so helping kids to be able to be resilient, to move past that. And as Selina said, it's more about their frame of mind. What am I thinking about this? Okay, so I'm struggling. What does this mean about me? Well, it means that I'm a human being and I don't get everything right all the time, but I have capacity to learn and to grow. So this also reminds me of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, which is really common in school. If you have a fixed mindset, you believe that you can't do anything, that you have innate ability or you don't have the ability at all, right? So, and I think this is often common with math classes is where they say it, because so many people struggle with math. And this was something that we talked about in a math class that I'm taking in college, is this fixed versus growth mindset. And so if you have a fixed mindset, you might think, this is hard. I just can't do it because I'm just not good at math. Whereas a growth mindset will say, this is a challenge. I just need to keep working to overcome it. And so we can definitely instill that with kids to help increase their self-confidence. But that can be a learned and developed skill in teens.
Yeah, for sure. All of this is actually learned either direction we go. When we look at kind of maybe the deterioration that occurs from younger childhood into teenage years into adolescence, and what kind of drives that, maybe that damage of self-worth or the damage of the confidence, you hit a couple of those points that are really important of what may be causing that. But I think there's a couple of other big key players in that are important to mention here.
Mm-hmm.
One is, like we've already talked about, the development stage, right? They're looking for feedback, that opportunity to become an individual and somebody separate from who their parents are, that they want that independence, that autonomy. And so they seek for the feedback. Well, we all know how things start in junior high with feedback from others. It can be quite cruel. And so we start to believe some of that. Another really big piece that I wanted to bring up here is our children's involvement in social media and media in general. Media in general portrays ideals, right? Like what the ideal look is like, especially if it comes to like body weight and muscle structure and things of that nature. And it's terribly unhealthy and inaccurate, but our children will gravitate toward that. And when we look at social media in particular, and this is why we've said on here many times, like, I won't give my kids social media. I won't let them have access to it, because social media is snapshots of people's lives at their very best. And what kids and even adults do is we compare others' very best to our very worst. And it's a terrible comparison. It's very dangerous, and it can and often does lead to lower self-esteem, a lack of confidence. And it is just a terribly unhealthy thing. And I think we're going to do a podcast in the near future that's going to dive a lot deeper into social media and the use of media in general for teens. But it does play a really, really big role. Selina, what do you often say about social media?
If you want to destroy your daughter's self-confidence, give her social media.
Yep.
There's a ton of truth to that.
Yeah.
And we see it a lot, and it's unfortunate. And, we have to look at the purpose of social media and what it's designed for. It's designed to make money. And they use a lot of psychological factors to keep people embedded in it and to keep them on the screen, because the more they're on the screen, the more ads can display, the more money can be made. And, Facebook and Instagram and all of those are not looking out for your best interest. They're just not. They're looking out for their best interest. And so having those limitations and those boundaries that say, not yet. And then when the time does come, teaching children responsible use of social media becomes very important, maybe later in the teen years, whatever age you decide to allow them to participate in that. And I would suggest allowing them to participate in it before they leave your home, so that you can help control it and help teach them to use it in a way that's healthy and appropriate, versus just saying, oh, you're 18, here you go. And then, they fall all over the place because there's no boundaries, and they don't know how to really set boundaries on their own yet.
Right. And so much of social media is derived from clicks and likes. How many likes am I going to get for this post? Or how many people are going to comment? How many people are going to see? That's not good for a teen's self-worth, because if they're not getting the likes, if they're not getting the clicks, right, or if people aren't commenting, they might start to wonder, well, does nobody care about me, right? And that's just not a healthy attitude and a healthy frame of mind. And we won't spend too much time on this, again, because this will be a future episode where we will delve more into it. But overall, I agree. What the age limit is for social media to allow your kids, that's really hard to say. I would say 12, 13, maybe even 14, probably too young from a developmental standpoint.
I thought you were going to say 12 or 13, and I was going to be like, Liz, no way. Absolutely not. And I think it's important that you mention that, because we can't just say, well, at 16, that's a good time.
Yeah.
See, we have to have those connections with our children and understand them and be involved in their lives, because everybody might be ready for that step at a different age and a different stage. So it's really hard to say, oh yeah, well, at 14 years old, you're ready for this, and at 16 years old, And we try to do that. We try really hard to do that. It's interesting.
We do. We give them a driver's license at 16. I look back and wonder why anybody gave me a driver's license when I was 16. I'm like, what were they thinking? Why? I'm amazed that I didn't kill anybody, and I wasn't a reckless driver. I was just a very nervous driver.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's a great example, Liz, as to why we want to find the right times. And sometimes we just go by societal norms and say, let's say 16 is the age for driving. And here in Idaho, where we're based out of, it's even younger. And so sometimes we see kids driving and we think, oh, yeah, when did they start giving 12-year-old driver's license? Because they look so young. But you as a parent have this awesome responsibility to know where your child's at and to know where their development is and to know when they're ready for this or that. And maybe it might be a good opportunity to ignore some societal norms and do what's best for your child.
If your child is struggling with self-worth in any way, shape, or form, not a good time to give social media a try, because that is going to have the exact opposite effect. So as parents, we can actually have a lot of influence if we are careful about the way we introduce things to our kids that maybe are societally normal, right? And I mean, my 12-year-old, and she's certainly not on social media, nor is she going to be. And I have no qualms about her being the only one that doesn't have a Facebook account. That's fine. I don't think it's actually true.
She's not the only one that doesn't have it, I promise.
Right. But from her perspective, she's the only one. And she's also the only one in her class that isn't allowed to just endlessly scroll on YouTube and doesn't just have unfiltered access to Google. And I'm like, I don't think you're the only one, but I'm perfectly fine being labeled a helicopter parent for that, to protect her and to help protect her self-worth, or help her develop a healthy self-worth. So let's discuss some signs that your teen is struggling with self-worth. So if they are seeking constant praise and reassurance, either from you or from anyone, if they are overly afraid of disappointing others, if they're over-focused on their appearance, popularity, or performance, avoiding risks or new challenges for fear of failure, and mood swings tied to others' opinions or approval. And I also want to differentiate the difference between when this is a genuine concern and when this is just kind of normal teen development, because at some point, all of these could happen, right? I mean, teens are going to naturally seek approval or praise or reassurance from their parents. If that's sometimes happening, that's okay. But if it's constant, right? And so if your teen occasionally experiences some of these, that's part of the normal development. But if this seems to be an ongoing problem, or if all of them seem to be happening at once, then you need to be concerned.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a great little list that you've given us, Liz. And you're right. All of those things are going to be part of the normal teenage experience. And for parents, the idea here is to be curious. We use that word a lot, and not to be judgmental of them, but questions like, I'm curious what made that so important to you.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And trying to get to the root of what they're feeling and kind of the reasoning behind their feelings. And I think not being judgmental and not shutting it down, because one of the things that we want to do when kids do experience rejection is we want to make sure we validate their pain, because it's real. And we've all experienced rejection, we've all experienced failure, and we've experienced that it can be painful, and sometimes it is. And so we need to acknowledge in our kids, that is disappointing. Yeah, I can see that. And, I understand. And sometimes we don't always get it right, or sometimes we fail, or sometimes we maybe come in dead last at something. And that can feel embarrassing or hard. But, we can also move past that. And that's when we can kind of then go into some of these self-worth techniques that we have talked about. Okay, so final topic, when to worry and what to do. So we're going to look at some red flags. So these are signs that you need to be seeking professional help for your teen. And it's important to briefly discuss these. So we have severe self-criticism, social withdrawal, risky behavior to gain approval, and persistent low self-esteem. Is there any of those that you guys want to hit on?
Well, those are all important flags to watch out for. I think the severe self-criticism is one of the big keys. If we can get that from them, right? We start to, usually in the early teen years, or maybe just before that, we start to develop an inner voice, or what we call self-talk. And if that becomes incredibly negative and critical, if you just imagine, somebody just constantly throwing insults at a young individual day in and day out, what that does to their self-confidence or their self-worth, it can destroy it really, really quickly. So if we have enough of a connection with our child to know or get them to be able to open up about that inner voice, and we hear those kinds of things, it might be a great opportunity to seek help from a counselor or professional. But the other things that may be more visible that you talked about, which are withdrawal from social settings or social circles, the risky behavior, in other words, being willing to do just about anything to get the approval of friends, and then, the persistent low self-esteem. If you're seeing that, again, that one's not maybe the easiest to see, but definitely an opportunity to kind of normalize talking about self-worth and normalize mental health. We get really good at talking crap about ourselves, but we're not so good at talking positive about ourselves. And again, that gets back to the modeling that we can do as parenting. But if we normalize that with our children, they get more comfortable. And then, of course, let's stay connected. That's always what Selina and I talk about here is that connection with our teens. The more connected we are with them, the more we're going to know and understand what's happening. And we'll be able to see those flags a little bit better and know when it's time to say, ooh, we better intervene here, maybe with some counseling or whatever it looks like.
And you can't love your teen out of poor self-worth. I think sometimes parents think, well, if I just love them and if I just show them how much I love them, I can show them their own self-worth. It doesn't always work that way. I mean, and yes, it is important to reassure them that you love them no matter what and you love them unconditionally. But if they're genuinely struggling with their own self-worth and feel like they are worthless themselves, you can't love them out of that. And they need professional help.
Right. And part of that is that, as Selina talked about earlier, our self-worth comes from our thoughts about ourselves. And when we have negative thoughts about ourselves and we constantly put ourselves down, it's really, really hard to believe that somebody else feels differently than what we are telling ourselves. And that's why we cannot love them into self-worth. So you're absolutely right.
Yep. Okay. Final thoughts.
Yeah. Just going more along that with understanding that our thoughts is what creates our self-confidence. And so us as adults too can work on that, of being our own best friend and working on the way that we talk to ourselves and building that confidence for us and teaching that to our children so that they can understand where that self-confidence comes from.
Good takeaway. Okay. Next week, we are going to continue this topic. So we're going to get into raising teens who know their worth and not just what others want them to be. Will be a great episode, and we will see you all next week. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.